Absolutely hope. Thank you very much, Robert.
You've not forgotten for a while.
Well, yeah. Anyway, yes. So, a lovely little song of about unity, which was written by the New Seekers and then shamelessly stolen by the Coca-Cola Corporation for their adverts. So, anyway, let's sing it together. Where are we? There. Here are the words. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company. I'd like to see the world for once all standing hand in hand and hear them echo through the hills for peace throughout the land. I'd like to build the world a home and furnish it with love, grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. First verse. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company. Isn't that just gorgeous? What a lovely sentiment. So, here we go. In June of 2016, the UK voted to leave the European Union. In September 2014, Scotland had a vote about independence and voted to remain as part of the United Kingdom. And less than 2 weeks ago, the Methodist Church had a vote at its conference and voted to adopt the principles of the God in Love Unites Us report. The headline of which is the thing that everyone talks about, and there's more to the report than this, is that the Methodist Church of Great Britain has adopted the principle of same-sex marriage and lots of other things that go along with it. Now, if we just revisit those three votes, the Brexit vote was carried 51.7% to 48.3%. The Scotland independence vote was carried 55.3% to 44.7%. And the Methodist God in Love Unites Us report was carried 84.7% to 15.3%. And I think in living memory, in any vote of that nature, when it's 50-50, yes or no, that's a momentous percentage by which that vote was carried a couple of weeks ago. Anytime that Brexit or Scottish independence is talked about in the news or in pubs and bars and restaurants across the country, the division is obvious. And that division is reflected in those figures, in that clearly we're pretty much split on both of those issues. And so, you know, on average, half the people you meet are going to be pro and half the people you meet are going to be against. And all that's kind of happened in the 5 and 7 years since those votes is in very many ways we're kind of nursing ourselves and nursing our wounds in some ways about where we are, because it's clear that those issues are still very divisive, even though those two votes were quite perfectly democratically passed. I mean, there's no challenge there, nor there should there be. But the fact is, the country and the voters in those votes remain extremely divided. And that is a centre point of the discussions that ensue as a result. It is clear from some of the feedback since the vote in the Methodist Church that there are voices on either side of that yes-no divide. However, the church now faces the job of moving forward, and yes, the church has clearly stated its objective to embrace all that the church possibly can in this. However, there's a huge difference, and that is that the mandate for this is undeniable and resounding. And that's a very different way of going forward after a vote of this nature. Because yes, we can attempt as best we can to be respectful of everybody's views and move forward. But the way forward is undeniable and is resounding. And I think that is very, very positive, whichever side of the argument on, and I mean positive in a literal sense. The church now knows where it stands, and that is now a question of how we go forward and how we manage it. The issue has been debated within the Methodist Church of the UK in anger, and I don't mean that in the literal sense of anger, for the last 9 years. So this is the end of a very long process in recent years. And the whole point is that there is now a very positive statement from the church that we are going to move forward to make church a safe space for everybody. And we now have to get on with the work that we have to do. In order to just give a flavour, I've got 3 very short videos teed up, which are short excerpts from parts of the debate on the final day before the vote went through. So it's 3 people, 2 of them introduce themselves, and the third is the new president of conference, Sonia Hicks. So just going to share these 3 videos, and altogether I think we're talking 5 minutes or so. So yeah, they're not especially long.
Madam President, Congress, Reverend P.J. Jackson, Bristol District. Unlike some of you, I came into the Methodist Church rather late in life. Grew up in the Baptist Church, African American Baptist Church, where women's gifts were not appreciated. I left that church and went to an interdenominational church where for the first time I heard a sermon on the Song of Songs, and I wept because I understood to the depths of which God loved me. And at this moment, I am a minister whose heart is breaking because I have a church where the majority of the people have left over this resolution and the ones that follow. My friend, my siblings, I would ask that you would support this because I don't want anybody out there to ever believe that God does not love them. I don't want them to ever believe that to the depths of which God cares for them. And so if that is something that we can facilitate here in this moment, then I say let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All, please.
Good morning, Madam President, members of Conference, James Blackwell, Northampton District. In the interest of living well with contradictory convictions and mindful that this is a painful day for many, whatever their view, I hope to speak with grace as well as conviction. I am mindful we aren't actually supposed to be debating whether homosexuality is okay, but instead whether those relationships should be viewed as marriage. But I will ask Conference to remember that for me, for many members of Conference, and for many around our connection, this is not some nice academic debate on what Romans 1 means that we have in a Bible study. This is our very lives. I do hope we'll accept this because it will give an affirmation to people of their God-given identities. In 2019, 1 in 8 LGBT young people had attempted suicide. Some were successful, like very sadly the Lizzie Lowe case, who could not accept her sexuality and her Christianity. I thankfully never got that far, but I still wince when I see trains pass at speed at a station, because I remember sitting at Newcastle Central Station thinking, if I can't deal with this in a couple of weeks, I will come here and I will jump. That was my experience as a 13-year-old. That is not life in all its fullness that Jesus promised. That is not grace that brings that to that point. And yet, Jesus did give me life in all its fullness. And I can honestly say my relationship, while not perfect, brings me life in all its fullness. And if we could marry, that would have sent the message to me as a 13-year-old that you are loved and cherished by God, when what I heard was that I was an abomination. It would lead to me understanding who I am in Christ. And so for the sake of other 13-year-olds alive now, I urge you to support this on pastoral grounds. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. I have been very impressed by this definition of white privilege given by Arlen Hamilton, who describes herself as a gay black woman. Arlen founded Backstage Capital, a firm that provides startup funds exclusively to people of color and LGBTQ+ entrepreneurs. She says on her Twitter account, if trying to understand your inherent privilege, think, when someone shorter than you needs to see the stage better at a show, you usually let them stand in front of you, right? You both get to enjoy the show. It's only a slight inconvenience, and you don't shrink. How do we acknowledge the place that others are entitled to at God's table? What are we willing to give up in order to give them space? What does this look like in terms of black people and young people, women, members of the LGBTQ+ community? If we think that their rights have nothing to do with us, then we do not yet understand the gospel reading in this service. As Christians, we are to mirror the grace and the mercy of God. We are to find ways of issuing God's invitation of acceptance to those we meet on a daily basis. No ifs, no buts.
So just a flavour from the debate before the vote went through. What we want to do tonight, and there is a reason for the fire, and Tim will explain that in a little while, is kind of acknowledging that we're in a place where the church, whilst it has made this extremely positive decision and now has work to do, it has a way to go. There is no doubt and no question that whilst this is a clear direction of travel for the church, we are playing catch up. And a little more on that later on, because society has kind of already ran a little further on ahead of us. So tonight we're kind of having a gathering where we're going to share some stories and celebrate some of the fabulous stuff that is going on in the world around us, in the world at large, in terms of inclusion and inclusivity. And that's kind of what we wanted to just let ourselves have some time to reflect on this evening. The theme of celebration, Jane found this really cute little video from about 6 years ago. It was a video that was put together for Universal Children's Day, with a group of people called Playing for Change. And it's very interesting, the style of the video you will recognise, because loads of people over the last year and a half in COVID have done lots of music videos like this, where they've pieced stuff together from people all over the place. But this was from 6 years ago, so just worth bearing in mind that before we go. So it is sheer unadulterated fun, and sorry if we find it a bit cheesy, but we're just going to have a little bit of a celebration video to pause, and then Tim's going to lead us through the session. Thank you.
Let's all celebrate and have a good time. Celebration. We're gonna celebrate and have a good time. It's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world, come on. It's your celebration. Celebrate good times, come on. Celebrate good times, come on.
There's a party going on right here, a celebration to last throughout the years.
So bring your good times and your laughter too.
We gon' celebrate your party with you. Come on now.
We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. Celebrate good times, come on. Celebrate good times, come on. We gonna celebrate your party with you. Come on.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. That was great, wasn't it? So I'm a bit out of breath because Martha suggested dancing. So we've been dancing around the garden to that particular tune. Welcome. Welcome to the fireside, to the fire pit. Tonight we're going to run the rest of our big worship as a sort of fireside stories. This is something we've been doing quite a lot at All We Can over this last 18 months or so, as we've been cut off from folks and not been able to see people and be together. We've introduced this idea of a fire pit and a fireside story. A place, because the fireside's kind of such a powerful image, isn't it? It's that place where we come and tell stories. It's the place where, for as long as there's been a human civilization, people have gathered around fire at the end of a day to cook meat or reflect on the day, or just to stay warm and safe and protect themselves against predators. It's very sort of ancient, historic idea that we come to the fireside, that we gather around the fire pit. And so that's what we're doing tonight, and telling some stories, some fireside stories. I don't know about you, but there's something about a fire pit that sort of loosens the tongue a little as well. As you sit round and watch a fire, you might tell some stories that you might not tell if you were having a coffee in a church, or sitting in a formal, wearing a shirt in a restaurant. You might just be a bit more honest, be a bit more open. So we hope to be open and honest with each other tonight. And the other kind of image and metaphor that we've used a lot at All We Can this year, as we've gathered around the fire pit. We've had regular fire pit prayers. Some of you might have seen some of those on the Cliff College social sites. We've been taking our fire pits to Cliff College digitally. Is this image of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, as fire, and this idea that when we sit around a fire pit and talk together, we put the Spirit right in the middle of our conversation. So yes, we might talk about all sorts of different things. We might stray off away from strict Bible study, but even as we do so, the Spirit is there in the middle. The Holy Spirit, who descends as fire at Pentecost, is still there with us, kind of holding our conversation together. So that's what we're going to do tonight, is tell some stories and have a sense of the spirit at the centre as we gather round. So pull up a pew, kick your shoes off. It's a really warm fire, as you can tell by the sweat glistening on my forehead, and you can come and get comfortable. The first fireside story that we're going to hear is from Kev, who's going to talk us a little bit about some of the pop culture stuff that he's been engaging with, and we'll hear some of the sense of how this whole movement of inclusivity, this warm welcome that comes from this fireside, is being echoed through there. Back to you, Mr. Dobson.
Sorry, Tim, I hadn't realised I was up again so soon. Yes, so I think, well, I mentioned in the intro that when we were thinking through this, very much feel like the church is playing catch up, because we feel in very many ways society has kind of already moved on this issue. It certainly disappoints me that the church at large hasn't embraced this far earlier than it has now. But I just kind of wanted to reflect on some of the places where this is evident in society around us. And also, there's no doubt about it that I've already said there was a lot more to the report than same-sex marriage, but it is the headline issue that the public at large see and talk about. So there's no question that that's the thing that grabs people's attention. I do a lot of chatting and befriending at work and in other places, and I often will get asked or will talk about the fact that I'm a Christian, and it gives rise to some very interesting debates. But I would say with confidence that of the last 20 discussions that I've had, 17 of them contained this issue, and the issue was brought up by the other person. People will say, "You're a Christian?" "Yeah, but the church hates gays, doesn't it?" And it's the issue that is in people's mind, and this thing about conversion therapy, and they have this, the public at large, those who know nothing about the church and nothing about Christianity, have this impression that the church is kind of old-fashioned and bigoted and has these attitudes, and so it's so often that is a part of discussion that people see, and it's why that headline is something that hopefully will allow us to move forward. But I think inevitably we are playing catch-up. We've kind of noticed, if you look at television dramas and things and that are made these days, there is a higher quota of diversion in there. There are more people of colour than there ever used to be. There are more disabled people than there ever used to be. There is more evidence of homosexuality than there ever used to be. And I know that there's, and I get sometimes a little bit unnerved about the sort of structured way in which we're doing that diversity, in that I think that can go a little too far. But there's no question, if you get new game shows these days, there will inevitably be, if it's a couples game show, there's same-sex couples coming on. And I think what I really like is the fact that there is no fuss made about it. We talk with Emma often about this issue, and the point that's really important to me is, I think our aim here is to make these issues normal and not that they don't stand out, and not to go too far the other way, and that they would become prioritised. And I think it's a very delicate balance to try and catch. But one example that we've had in the last couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks now, Lorna, since we saw it, we've started going back to the cinema as they opened again. And we watched one of the most beautiful films that we've ever seen a few weeks ago, called Supernova. You may have either seen it or you may have seen the trailer. It's got Colin Firth in it, ladies, so you'll remember him from, what was it, Jane Eyre or something? What was it? Pride and Prejudice. Sorry, I'm showing my ignorance now. When he came out of that lake, I know the bit that mattered. Colin Firth is in it, a very well-respected actor, and Stanley Tucci. And I have to say, of the performances in the film, Stanley Tucci's performance is absolutely outstanding. And this film is in many ways so slow. in that in some ways, hardly anything happens, but yet you were never anything but completely gripped. And we're just going to show the trailer from it now to give you a bit of an insight into an idea about what the film's about. It is the official trailer, so there are no deep spoilers, although you will get a good idea about what the film is about.
It's good to get back on the road again, don't you think? But how about just exploring the outer regions of fifth gear? How are you? If you had one wish in the world, what would it be?
I wish this holiday wouldn't end.
So, can you tell that it's gotten worse? I'd like to make a speech.
Well, maybe Sam will do it for me.
I'd love
Why don't
to.
you do it for me? As most of you will know, I am slowly losing my ability to remember.
It's not fair to you.
It's not about fair, it's about love. I want to see this through with you to the end.
You know, a very wise man once said, "We will not starve for lack of wonders, but from lack of wonder."
It is a truly amazing film, and I'd thoroughly recommend it. Very emotional, and deals with all manner of issues, and obviously end-of-life issues, which are a whole other can of worms to talk about and think about. I think the overpowering thing for me was that when we finished watching it, it is one of the most beautiful love stories you will ever witness. It is amazing, really powerful. And when it was finished, I just sort of reflected and thought, at no stage was it significant to me that there were two guys. And that is something that is being brought into culture, and that's a fine example of where the church has got a way to go, because it was completely normalised, the fact that there were two guys. It was far more overpowering was their relationship and what was going on for them. And on a personal level, this is really important to me, because I'm 55 now. I'll pause while they think surely he's not that old. And I was born and I was raised to despise homosexuality, and I was in that place. It was part of my family. I was a complete. I don't like homophobia because I don't think it's fear. I think it's nastiness. But I was raised a homophobe, and I am not in that place now, and it's really powerful and overwhelming for me to kind of have gone through that situation and to be where I am now. But I thought what was so amazing was that the one issue that didn't matter in that film is the fact that they were same-sex. It's a far more serious and overwhelming film than that, and I would thoroughly recommend it. Anyway, I'll stop rattling and I'll get back to the fire before it goes out. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Kev. Thank you for sharing around the fireside. And it's good we've had Kev Dobson around the fireside telling us a bit of story. It's nice to have Colin Firth and Stanley Tucci around the fireside. First time I've had either of them in my back garden, but they're welcome back anytime. There's one more person I'd like to introduce to you now. He's not here in person, but I'm going to read his words. He's the Irish poet and Catholic and homosexual man who has spent much of his life reflecting on the tensions within some of those descriptions of him. A man called Padraig Ó Tuama. He's written many books and was for a time the leader of the Corrymeela community, which some of you may have come across. He wrote a poem called Returnings, which I'm just going to read now. I see her, former colleague, in the baggage area of a foreign airport. "Oh, hi," she says, looking awkwardly towards the empty carousel. Then she decides. "I hear you're gay now," she says. "Are you still a Christian?" Oh, how will we tell this story? She to her friends with sadness, curiosity, and prayers for reorientation and returning. Me to mine with sadness, anger, and prayers for refocusing the lenses and returning. And the anger was all mine, but that question was all about her. Should we not just dance Instead, I should have said, together turn a little waltz in, the chorus of our own bodies, while we wait and wait and wait for something better than the empty carousel of this question. How will we tell this story? How will I tell this story? With sadness, with practicings of little ballroom dances, while we wait confidently for what is most important to be returned. And let's have another voice around the fireside. Welcome to the fireside, Reverend Rob.
Thank you very much, Tim. I have 3 short fireside stories, and it starts with my good lady wife, Rachel, who at this moment in time is bombing down the M1 with a very anxious 19-year-old football fan from Cumbria, hoping to get back for, as Kev said, something that's happening at 8 o'clock. I await the envelope that comes from the police saying, "You've been speeding." When Rachel went to university, she started a lifelong friendship with Michael, who was from North America. And they both shared a passion for history and languages. And we've just had an email from Michael, who has celebrated 30 years of being with his boyfriend, Stefan, 15 of which they have been married. And the story is a good story because it's a joy to have been able to be brought into their friendship. But the story is a little bit sad because Rachel, as a long-term Methodist, and Michael, being a long-term Catholic, could not marry the love of his life in his home church. And the sadness would have been to have been able to have flown out to America and conducted their marriage service for them. But we weren't at that point. But there is great joy and great happiness because I think some of the stories that come out say, well, oh, those people, they never last. 30 years down the line, they're still going strong. And there's something to be celebrated, something about just being love together. One of the churches I happily work with has an occasional visitor, a young man in his early 20s, a trainee hairdresser. And he has already said to me, "Rob, when I can find a man who wants to put up with me, I want you to marry us." And it will be an absolute joy when that day comes, but we're not too sure when that will be. He's still hunting. I think it has to be somebody who likes somebody who often changes his hair color from blue to pink to red to multicolored. We don't know where that will be. We don't know when that will be, but it will be an absolute joy that for him, it's an absolute logical thing to ask his local minister to celebrate their love by conducting their marriage. And whilst that might feel a little bit at a distance, somebody in the congregation, I do look forward to the day when my Eve, who is now 23, comes to me and say, "Rob, I found somebody, please, will you marry us?" And that person will be a girl. And it will be an absolute joy to stand in front of her. And I can't wait for that day to come. It's been an absolute celebration over these last few weeks to realize that I can do something that I've not been able to do before. I think I'll stop there.
I don't have it more together than you do, though. Thanks, Rob. Thank you. And Fireside is the place where we're honest and we say the things we really wanted to say. Thank you. There's another wonderful soul whose story we'd like to hear at the fireside tonight. It's a Danish story. Emma, can we hear from you?
So
Welcome
Emma has pre-recorded, so I'm sharing a video that she put together a couple of days ago for us.
So I have a couple of examples of good inclusion to share from my time living here in Denmark. There's actually quite a lot that's easy to take for granted here. Don't get me wrong, there's still quite a long way to go. I know that moving here has been a much easier experience for me than it is for many others, and there are lots of people's rights that aren't respected as much as they deserve. However, there are some incredible examples of inclusion here, and like I say, you can take them for granted if you're not careful. One of those great examples is the freedom and safety that LGBTQ+ people find here. The rights of queer people to be out, to marry and to adopt children have been secure for some time now. Throughout the month of June, the rainbow flag flies proudly outside my school, and this year a group of high school students started a podcast project, which was released on the school's social media and website, where they talked about the different terms under the LGBTQ+ umbrella and spoke out on the impact of discrimination. There are teachers who are out and proud here. It's taken some time to get to that point, but it is wonderful to see queer teachers being visible with no reason to be scared. I see people being empowered and strengthened by this, myself included. I've seen students sporting the Copenhagen Pride wristband, either as queer people or as allies, and it is a delight to witness this generation of children growing up knowing that those of them who will discover along the way that they are bi, gay, trans and queer have a greater chance of doing so in a world where they have role models, people like them, to show it's okay. It's so natural to see rainbow flags flying from apartment windows, and I really do feel and hope that people feel safe being out in public with the person they love. That's true from what I've seen anyway. It's not always plain sailing. There have been cases of gay couples initially being denied the same rights to co-sign on a new house as their straight counterparts, but these problems are brought to the fore when they arise, and people know they can call the relevant companies out on it with a reasonable chance of effecting change. The second thing I'm going to share is an unashamedly soppy tribute to the church community I found here, ICC. This is a place that gets ecumenical worship so beautifully right. One of the first things that struck me about worship here since the very first service is that I experience a lovely mix of the familiar and the new. Aspects of worship I recognise from services I've attended at home in the Methodist Church, alongside others that are less familiar from different cultures, denominations and traditions. This is true of the hymns and songs that we sing, the styles of prayer, Holy Communion, and the theology woven through the worship. It's clear that over the 60 years this church has been alive, people have come from all over the world and been made to feel at home. The church's worship in life has been shaped by the people who've come through its doors and stayed for what might be weeks, months, years, in some cases decades. Each pastor has been called to open the church's mind and bring something of their own identity, and this is true of those who serve as assisting ministers, Sunday school teachers, readers, greeters and musicians. We know that we all come from so many different backgrounds, traditions, worshiping styles, belief systems and cultures. However, we know we're united. I'd really like to think that everyone here has the freedom to come as they are and feel fully accepted, fully welcomed and fully loved, because the love of God that has brought each of us to that place transcends all our differences and allows us to work through those differences. This feels like the kind of place where people are not expected to come and fit in with the rigidity of the way we've always done it. People are welcome to come as they are and are so warmly welcomed here that they have the room to make themselves at home and add a little something new to the identity of the church.
Fabulous. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for your fireside story this evening and two stories of showing inclusivity at work in culture and in church there in Copenhagen. And perhaps that gives us hope and gives us challenge too. It's lovely to see rainbow flags arriving at the fireside in the Quinn household. Those of you who can see those. There's a rainbow vibe to our fireside slowly creeping in, which is what we want to see. Next little thing that happens a lot at firesides, you tell stories. You read little bits of stories or things that come to you. I've been reading this book for the last couple of months, partly in preparation for God in Love Unites Us and partly on the recommendation of some good friends, some of whom are here tonight. The Book of Queer Prophets, it's called. 24 chapters written by people who've had experience of religion, but also experience of being bi or gay or queer in some way and wanting to express the challenges of that. The chapter I just happened to be reading today is written by somebody called Erin Clark, and in that chapter they explore some of the importance of how Jesus talks about being salt of the earth, that famous passage. And one of the things Erin highlights is that salt needs both its parts, both its chemical compounds, in order to be what it is, in order to stay salty. Jesus talks about that, doesn't he? About salt not losing its taste. So I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs where Erin unpacks that idea. I think of this parable when I encounter people convinced it's impossible to be two things at once, both Christian and queer, for example. Salt needs its composite parts to remain salty, although they're different and individually volatile elements. It's only by their fusion that the miracle of salt happens. A similar fusion happens when any person dares to live their lives as a whole person, with all their identities acknowledged, although they may be jostling. This hybridity is unsettling, and it can leave us asking, am I enough? Christian enough? Queer enough? As if it weren't possible to be enough of more than one thing. As if the parts of a person, the identities formed by cultures and experiences and DNA, somehow compete in an endless game of top trumps. The reality is that all the facets of who we are, what makes us salty, are not always going to sit perfectly easily alongside one another. In order to negotiate the times when they don't sit perfectly, when our hybridity seems more burden than gift, when we feel we can't be enough, or it isn't safe or sustainable to live with all our authentic colours to the fore. That's where passing comes in. Living authentically doesn't mean we have to lead with all of our identities all of the time. It's just as authentic to be working out the exact composition of our saltiness. I wonder what identities make up our saltiness tonight at Methley. Perhaps we can find ways to be salt of the earth in new and fresh ways, new and fresh compositions of ourselves. The other thing, of course, that we do at Firesides is sing together, and we're lucky to have Kev's wonderful guitar with us. Back to you, Kev, for some fireside music.
It wouldn't be a fireside chat without a song. So, in the Commonwealth Games in Australia in 2006, there was a theme song that was adapted, and it was a song that was written by an Australian guy called Ben Lee. It's quite quirky. It's not really sing-along, so I'm just going to sing it, but try and catch the words. It is quite quirky, and in a way you could say it's a little bit twee, but it's quite clever, and overwhelmingly the essence and the message within is just utterly for us this evening. So this is called We're All in This Together. But you would have realised that because it's said very many times during the song. Woke up this morning, I suddenly realised we are all in this together. I started smiling, 'cause you were smiling, and we're all in this together. I'm made of atoms, you're made of atoms, and we're all in this together. And long division just doesn't matter, 'cause we're all in this together. I saw you walking in the city, we are all in this together. The city's changing, 'cause we are changing, and we're all in this together. Every 12 seconds, someone remembers that we're all in this together. In the kitchen of your rent control apartment, we're all in this together. Come on, baby. I only wanted to reach out and touch you. I've got to start to open my heart. I know you think about jumping ship before it sinks, but we are all in this together. Ask a scientist, it's quantum physics, we are all in this together. And on the subway, we feel like strangers, we're all in this together. Yeah, I love you and you love her and she loves him, but we are all in this together. You know, baby, there's never been protection in all this human connection. Come on, darling, it's alright to show me you don't ever need to be lonely once you start to open your heart. I saw you crying, I started crying, 'cause we're all in this together. And then religion, a big decision, but we're all in this together. 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 We are all in this together.
We have to acknowledge the excellent dance moves from the family Quinn. Thank you very much indeed. And if you spotted, there you go, take a bow, take a bow. It's also worth noting that Tim was disappearing in his own smoke. It sounds a bit tacky, but it is difficult to see the way forward if you are all smoked up. It's a really poor, cheesy link, but there we go. I've come to Big Worship, hot tailing it from the celebration of a new minister starting in Ossett. The local Church of England have just appointed a new vicar, and it's all very exciting. And he was busily handing out his little calling cards to anybody who wanted to be in contact with him. And it kind of struck me to look at my own calling card, which you can see there, with the big Methodist symbol on and a list of the poor churches that have to put up with me. What do you mean, Anne? You're not meant to be nodding. There is another symbol that I've put next to it, which is perhaps a new symbol. It's the new Methodist logo, which has been adopted by the Equality and Diversity group, who have been one of the groups behind helping the Methodist Church explore the way in which it views marriage. And so I think I may have to update my calling card from just the logo of the Methodist Church to the logo of the Methodist Church that says, all are loved, all are welcome, all are equal. What next for us, particularly those folks who are involved with Methodist Church? What is next for us? We've had this vote that now gets passed down to us as churches. It'll be a time of reflection, a time of prayer, a time of heart searching, perhaps because it's been going on for so long. Tim said it's been debated for 9 years, and there are reports that go back even longer than that, to kind of 20 years. We have now reached this point around the fireside telling the story, where the story comes back to our individual churches. And the individual churches over the next months will be invited to say, how do you see marriage? How do you see loving couples? Currently, the marriage service talks about a man and a woman. The suggestion is to change those, or to add to those, that the marriage service is for two people who find themselves in love. No need to differentiate between genders and sexes, but just to say, marriage is about two people being together, coming together and being in love together. It's something that we celebrate. We don't try and distinguish between the two parts. And I think, as Kev was saying at the beginning, part of this journey is exploring what it means to be a group of people who offer safety, who offer places where folks can come and just be, can come and just join in worship, can come and join in and explore what it means to be people who are loved unconditionally by a God who creates and restores and enjoys the world which has been made for us. There is a new chapter, there is a new story that is going to be written around the fireside over the coming weeks and coming months. And it's a story that I'm sure would be more richer if we are all part of it, whatever our stories may be, whatever our connections may be, whatever it is that we think or feel. Because as we've experienced, when you gather around a fireside and you talk and you listen, emotions are there. Stories help us understand where we are as followers of Jesus. And those stories help us to understand what the next part, what the next chapter will look like. Who knows, in the years and decades to come, somebody may be writing a book about us on this evening when we, as the big worship group, got together and shared stories and explored how we feel about two people being in love. We are going to continue singing round our fireside, and Kev's going to lead us in our final songs. And then at the end, we will unmute, as is our tradition, and share in the words of the grace. Thank you, Kev.
Thanks, Rob. Just before we do, and whilst sparing his blushes, thanks to Tim for hosting us tonight. I think the biggest miracle of all is, with all the tears that have been shed, that fire didn't go out. So very well done, sir. Tim had spent most of the week at conference and did put together just a very short video of his reflections on the evening of the vote, and he would never have put himself forward to share this, so we're sharing it for him. So this is our very own, with a little reflection on what happened.
In through the door, tired and more from all the walking, and sore from committees and subcommittees, consultation and pre-consultation, notices of motion and debates about whether or not we should have debates, indicative votes, scribbled notes. But this is not about sheep and goats. There's no winners and losers here, but we are here, wiping a tear. Here, here, here. Tired, but here. So kick off your walking boots. The pilgrimage is over, for now, and it's time to meet in this new space, to learn again about grace, to look each other in the face, and find our place in this new arrival. We give thanks for our survival, and know that we can only thrive if we strive to be church here, here, here. The door is open, the space has been made, and the barriers can fade between us and them. As we make room for siblings, for truly living, we are giving a wider invitation for the whole of God's creation to join us at the table. So pull up a pew, put your feet up, and let's create a church so new, so new, so new for each and every one of you.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, we're going to, our closing prayer / song is one that we do find ourselves singing regularly, but there's a good reason for that. And it couldn't, I don't think, be more appropriate this evening that together we sing, We Are People on a Journey. We are people on a journey, moving forward every day, with our friendship growing closer through our work and in our play. We learn about each other and ourselves along the way. God's people journey on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. God's people journey on. Now we don't know every detail that the future has in store, but we're quite prepared to boldly go where no one went before. We know that God is there for us, and who can ask for more? That's why we journey on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. God's people journey on. There are some who travel boldly, there are some who must compete. Bikes and cars and aeroplanes, while others use their feet. But we'll all end up together when the journey is complete. God's people journey on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. God's people journey on. So we journey on together with a God who will not rest. Until the hungry fed and all the poor are blessed. If there is anyone unexploited or oppressed, the journey must go on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. God's people journey on. Thanks, everyone. That's been lovely to share this evening. Thank you very much for being here. Genuinely, if there's anything that has been shared here that you're uncomfortable with, or you'd like to talk to any of us about, please do. We'll keep the fire going. Tim, that's your job. So we'll keep it going. Sorry, and let's pretend that is still going, and let's keep the debate going for all that we're worth, because that's what it's all about. So here we go, moving forward. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. We're going to close by sharing the grace together. If you would kindly unmute so we can create the beautiful noise, and the words are in the chat if you are unfamiliar with them. So let us share together. May the good faith
Jesus Christ, the love of God, fellowship, worship of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Good night, everyone.
Cheerio.
Bye, Fidel.
Thank you.
Come on, Italy. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all. See you later.
Thank you anyway, Kevin Lorna. It's been very good.
All right, lots of love.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.